And we're back with another episode of the Branders Magazine Talking with Branders podcast. I'm your host, Steven Bacant. And in the studio today, I have a legend with us, Luis Miguel Messianu. I hope I pronounced that right. It's been a hell of a day. He's an innovator. He's a mentor, and he has been so influential in the evolution of multicultural marketing. And this is something that, I can't wait to dive into with him. And so, Luis, hi, welcome. Tell us all about yourself.
Hi, Steven. Thank you for having me. Excited to join, Branders, who's, a great publication. I've been following it. I've written articles, and it's great to be now in your podcast. I'm Luis Miguel Messianu. I'm your typical Romanian Hispanic, living very close to the U.S. in Miami, dodging storms and
Right.
trying to have fun. But I've been in multicultural marketing pretty much the last 30 years of my life. I started in advertising at the tender age of 17, and I've been writing for a living and living to write ever since. I founded an agency back in '94. We operated the first few years under the name Del Rivero Messianu. And then in 2007, I reinvented, relaunched, rebranded the agency as Alma. And, I just closed that chapter. I left the agency June 30th, which, as you can imagine, has been kind of an emotional roller coaster. But I'm starting a new chapter in my creative journey, and I'm very excited to continue, with my personal mission of helping elevate the image of Latinos in the U.S.
Wow, what a dynamic history. And you started at 17. What happened at 17 that made you want to get into advertising?
It was one of those happy accidents, and I blame football or soccer.
Oh, sure.
Because I was a goalie, and my teammates, especially the defense, always made sure that I would show up to the games. I've been writing, ever since I remember. I started writing when I was a small kid. And one of the guys that picked me up early on a Sunday read something that I had written, and I left it on my desk while I took a shower. And on the way to the game, he said, "Did you write that?" I said, "Hey, you nosy bastard." It was kind of personal, but on the way to the game, he said, "You should be a copy." A copy? What's a copy? And he started talking about cocktail parties and beautiful models and a very glamorous advertising life. Long story short, on Monday, I showed up for an interview with a detergent box full of my write-ups, and I was hired on the spot. And, it was incredible because the following weekend, my first radio campaign aired, and I figured, oh my God, this is going to be fun. I'm going to make a little money, and it sounds glamorous. Of course, things have changed since then. The industry has become far, far more cutthroat. But
Yeah.
I love this business. I wouldn't change it for anything.
I think it's amazing that you can get hired on the spot, and then a week later hear your work in public. I've been working on campaigns now for years, and I feel like they've never seen the light of day. Right?
Believe me, I'm in that camp, especially as of late.
Yeah. You mentioned it, right? You're the son of Romanian immigrants who met in London, and you were born and grew up in Mexico. How has that influenced you as a creative? That's varied. That's a lot of rich substance behind you.
Yes, it definitely has had an impact on my upbringing and also on the way I approach the business. I was very fortunate. I had a very happy childhood. Both of my parents spoke multiple languages. In fact, my father was the financial officer at Shell in London, and the president of the Mexican subsidiary apparently resigned abruptly, And one of the top guys figured, oh, Messianu speaks several languages. He probably speaks Spanish. And they sent him on what was supposed to be a 6-month assignment. And they fell in love with the Mexican culture. They stayed. In fact, they're both underground in Mexico. And for my purposes, I've always been, very open to new cultures. I've been very open to art and music. My father played the sax and the violin. He lost his father at an early age, and he sustained himself and his mother playing sax and violin at an orchestra. So at home, there was always music, especially classical music and jazz. My dad loved jazz. My mom was a map drawer, and she was quite talented in terms of all the detail. So I think creativity runs in my veins. My sister's an architect, and she's also an artist. So I think we were brought up with this commitment and this inclination for art and culture. And of course, it is certainly very well working in the multicultural market. It's funny because when I first moved to the US, I thought I spoke very good English, but I realized that I had quite a bit of an accent. And a lot of people used to tell me, but you don't look Mexican. I say, well, no, I'm the son of Romanian immigrants. And back in the 80s, when I started in this business, a lot of clients kept asking, but what's Hispanic about it? And there were some preconceptions. In fact, I used to start my presentations, especially with tough clients in New York, by apologizing for my English, saying, I'm sorry for my English, but it's my third language, which really changed things and put me in a different place.
Yeah. As the son of an Italian immigrant, I can relate to the constant just being exposed to culture, right? And culture being music, being food, a different way of living. And I definitely can feel how that has impacted myself as a creative, because I was a jazz musician. I sustained myself for 10 years as a jazz musician when I lived in San Diego. So it's amazing how I think that it just goes to show that having these different perspectives can really help fuel this creativity that we all kind of have inside of us. I have to ask you a question. If someone were to ask you what you're very passionate about Hispanic multicultural marketing, do you consider yourself a Mexican?
Yes, I'm a proud Mexican. I've been asked that question. In fact, I'll tell you a funny story. This is the World Cup in 1986.
In Mexico, Maradona.
Exactly. I was there.
Wow.
Yeah. And in fact, the previous one, 1970, as a little kid, my dad was a huge fan of football and box. But there was a game. Mexico, I think, made it to the second round, and they lost precisely against Italy. Your home
Forza Azzurri.
Yes, and then I was devastated. And I remember my mom trying to comfort me, and my reaction was, you're happy because Romania did make it to the third round, but I'm Mexican, so wow. Yes, I'm very proud. I'm very thankful for having grown up in Mexico. I think it's a magical country.
It is,
with all its ups and downs and some of the political and social issues that have in a way slowed down its progress. But culturally, socially, the way friendships are forged, Mexico, it's very close to my heart.
Yeah, it's very rich. I lived 20 years or so in San Diego. And so in San Diego, we're on the Mexican border. I spent a lot of time in Tijuana and Ensenada, down Baja, and I too have there's something about Mexico that is just Mexico, Amazing. And just so you know, Luis, I cried hysterically in 1994 when Baggio hit the penalty over the crossbar to lose the final.
I
That
was there.
was
I was there too. Funny enough, I was there with our McDonald's client at the time, who invited us to the final. So yeah, I love football. I've been to several finals. I was in
wow.
70, 86, 94, and 98 in France.
In France, yeah. Wow. Oh my God, I love. We could talk football. I want to do a whole show on branding and football.
Perfect. I'm all for it.
Because I am addicted to the sport. It is my only thing that I really follow with passion. So you've been so instrumental, Luis, over the course of your career in building brands across diverse markets, right? Multiple different markets. Is there one campaign that you felt was truly disruptive? Like, what's that one campaign where you're like, that was the one where the Rubik's Cube all lined up and the client was bold and confident, the creative was perfect, the insight was there, and it was magic? What rings a bell?
In fact, since I'm just starting, I'm going to use two examples from my previous life at Alma, and two campaigns come to mind. The first one, what's interesting is that it wasn't your traditional campaign. Coors Light has been a sponsor of the NFL, and when we got the brief to do something around the NFL, we were talking about the other football. We figured, well, is there something special about the connection of Latinos with the NFL? As I mentioned, my personal mission, and this has been my why since the beginning of my journey, especially in the Hispanic market, has been to help elevate the image of Latinos in the U.S. And in the back of my mind, every time I was looking at work, and I've been doing this for a long time, my subtext is this idea positive? Will it help portray Latinos in a better light? Will it help elevate the image of Latinos in the U.S.? And one of the first questions we asked ourselves as we started developing this campaign for Coors Light and the NFL was, is there a Latino that really had an amazing career and a journey in the NFL? And of course, most of the creative team were quite young. And I remember saying, I think Jim Plunkett was originally Latino, but back then they wouldn't brag about their origin.
Yeah.
And as we kept digging, we found out Tom Flores, who was the quarterback and then the coach in Los Angeles, and coincidentally his nickname is the Iceman. And the idea platform for Coors Light is chill.
Yeah.
So right away we said, wow, there's something here. And at age 83, he was still not inducted into the NFL. So instead of developing a traditional, sponsorship or a celebrity campaign, we embarked on a journey to create a movement to get him inducted
into the Hall of Fame.
And it happened. So it became from the Iceman to Canton, and we developed a website. We generated a movement, and it really was something very special. We captured the precise moment in which the representative of the NFL knocked on his door, and he got really emotional. And so we put his image on the can. We did special packaging, and talk about an interesting KPI. Get him inducted.
Yeah.
and not only that, the brand linkage. As a branding person that you are, you appreciate that in a lot of instances the brand linkage isn't there. But a happy coincidence of him being nicknamed the Iceman with the whole notion of chill worked out really, really well. And Coors Light has been making inroads in the Hispanic market. And in a big way, I think thanks to that effort, which, really paid off my personal mission and the mission that a lot of people at Alma subscribed to. So that's one of my biggest points of pride. The other one I have to mention are Better with Pepsi campaign. You've probably seen it.
Yeah.
To me, not only it was brilliant from a pure creative aspect, and since the beginning, when the creative team, a couple of great Brazilian art directors, showed it to Alvaro Suñol, who's the CCO at Alma, and myself, right away we said there's something here. But it started just as a print idea. And we were very fortunate that on the other side, we have a client like Todd Kaplan, who's the CMO at Pepsi, who has become a good friend. In fact, we spoke together at Cannes, and we talked about this case. And the theme for the presentation was collaborativity, the mix between creativity and collaboration. And I have to say, it's probably one of the most courageous campaigns I've ever worked on, both from his perspective and from mine. Because at the time, I had recently been appointed as the Global Chief Creative Officer for McDonald's. And the premise of this campaign and how it got amplified was that the largest QSR companies in the US had been serving Coke for 30 plus years. But after COVID, with the whole emergence of delivery, we realized that people could really, have the benefit of trying their burgers with Pepsi. And they had just conducted a research that really proved in blind tests that people enjoy their burgers better with Pepsi.
Interesting.
So, the campaign survived against all odds. It was rejected originally by Todd's management. In fact, even the CEO at some point turned it down, and they all recognized the brilliance and the courage behind it. But we stood the course. For me, it was also touchy because one of the ads was with McDonald's, and working with McDonald's for 10 years, it creates some nervousness inside the agency. But I think everybody appreciated the idea, but also the guts that it took to get it done. It was I think the highest awarded campaign last year, and right before I left Alma, we developed a follow-up, which is changing this whole notion of rum and Coke, challenging rums to pair it with Pepsi. So I think those two examples, the Coors Light and the Pepsi, definitely stand out. Quite recent.
What do you do when in your heart and in your soul, and your creative team knows it too, that you got something fucking amazing, right? This is amazing. But the executive leadership team doesn't see it. They push back. They want to be safe. How do you break through that?
More than a creative talent, I would say that I built the agency and I built my own journey based on protecting the two most fragile aspects in our business: people and their ideas. And I think if you talk to people that were part of my teams, they would tell you that I never gave up. And if I believed in an idea, I had the conviction, and I had the call it stubbornness, call it smarts and bags of tricks to push for it. Let me tell you a little bit about my philosophy, and I've had this conversation with a lot of creatives. We have to understand as creative people that there's a natural tension between what we do and what clients do. And I think, I read an amazing quote from Contagious Magazine. In fact, I have it right here, so let me read it to you. Let me see. Well, no, now I cannot find it, but it says that the biggest merit of great ideas is for the people that approve ideas and risk their careers, not so much the people that come up with the ideas.
Mm-hmm.
And if you think about it, marketing people, when they join a company, the first thing they get, it's the history of the brand, the corporate manual, the brand guidelines. So in a way, they get paid to protect the past. As creatives, we get paid to break them all, to come up with a new. So in as much as you put yourself in the place of clients, and you realize that almost by design, they're in a different camp than you. To me, it's about building trust, building this partnership. I use a metaphor, which is the tennis court. I don't like this notion of thinking outside the box. I like the notion of, creativity and creative bravery. It's pretty much like a tennis court. And if you have a good, athlete on the other side,
Yeah.
they're going to push you to put the ball as close as possible to the line. Outside, it's art, it's literature. If you put in the middle, is what happens with so many categories in which you can almost, interchange the logos. Everything looks the same. But if you really push yourself to put the ball as close as possible to the line, and the lines symbolizing, the cultural context, the brief or creative strategy that you're working against, the corporate environment, the client reality, the CMO, environment in which they have to approve this work, then you really realize that the great ideas are about, of course, great marketing, great insights, freshness, and diverse perspectives, but also in terms of building the trust and this collaborativity, this willingness to break the mold. I tell clients, my job is to reduce your media investment.
Right.
In today's environment, if we come up with ideas that connect with audiences, it becomes earned media.
Yeah.
It's not like you have to repeat and repeat and repeat
Right.
an average message that truly doesn't connect or resonate.
There are so many amazing sound bites that just came out of what you're just saying. Incredible. What about a moment where you took a creative risk, and it paid off? Like, what lessons did you learn from that risk taking where you just went for it?
Well, Pepsi for sure is one. Another one, and I won't mention the client name or the campaign, but this illustrates a little bit of creativity applied also to presentation and salesmanship.
The theater of branding, the theater of advertising.
Many years ago, we had presented an idea, and we knew that under the microscope of the political environment back then, it would be kind of touchy. But it was an amazing idea, and I truly believed in it. And it was about a pregnant woman, and you're gonna understand, and the audience as well, that it was also for McDonald's, and the team in charge kept rejecting it. So what I did at the time, I had a very good friend that worked for the competition. This is long before email. What I did is I had, in the circle of trust, I sent him the storyboard, and I asked them to put it in their letterhead and fax it back to me. And I was going to have drinks with the CMO at the time. And I purposely took the fax and wrinkled it. And after a couple of drinks, I pulled it out and I said, hey, through my network and my intel, I found this storyboard that one of our competitors is about to produce. And when he saw it, he said, wow, this is so cool. I said, isn't it? I think it's brilliant. Well, guess what? This is something that we presented and your team has been rejecting. Long story short, we got it approved. It was a huge success at the time. Of course, success has multiple parenthood, and everybody, absorbed a little bit of that success. But I mentioned this because, and it's something that I also tell the creative teams. It's not only coming up with the idea; it's understanding what's the marketing, what's the solution, the business solution that you're providing to a client in the context of life or culture, but also understanding how to put yourself in the shoes of your clients and finding ways to entice them and building a relationship in which together you're willing to take smart risks.
Yeah. Brilliantly executed on that idea. That one's like going in the toolbox, and if I could pull out a fax machine, I will one day. You've been a real big vocal advocate for diversity in advertising. Even before it was the thing to do as it is now. How do you ensure that DE&I initiatives are not just checking a box, that especially for the brand, like how do you ensure that they become a genuine extension of who the brand really is? Because I feel like all brands these days just need to check that box, and that's bullshit.
Great question, and you're touching on one of my favorite topics. And first of all, let me say that I think, as an industry that prides itself in being innovators and trendsetters and being ahead of the game, as an industry, we should be embarrassed in terms of how slow and how long it has taken to really embrace, but apply notions of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I have to say, it might be controversial. I see a lot of general market agencies that are still talking, but very few walking the talk.
Yeah.
And I call it the one of each syndrome. They have to hire an African American, a Latino, an Asian American. Mm-hmm. Now they added a member of the LGBTQ plus community, and check. But in most cases, they sit them in the back of the office, and their voices are not heard.
Yeah.
So it doesn't really make a difference. Just covering a quota, it's not enough. It has to be part of your business plan. It has to be a commitment. And as I tell clients, interesting ideas come from interesting people. It's as simple and as complex as that. And in all candor, it better reflects the changing face of America. A lot of conversation about DE&I. I would add a B, which is belonging, that has to do with listening and providing a space to those diverse voices to be heard and to impact the direction of a company. I think effective DEI and B programs can really serve as a springboard for an all-inclusive approach. And it's across all stakeholders, internally, externally. It has to do with vendors, suppliers, employees, retailers, consumers. It's an ecosystem. It cannot just be, oh yeah, we hired a couple of people of color, and we're in business. You have to do it across all the different systems. And the other thing I would say, a lot of people are now confusing DE&I efforts with multicultural marketing, or they're doing that in lieu of effective multicultural programs. And it's not either or; it's an and. You have to do it, all encompassing. And the way I look at it is, DEI and B is about values. Multicultural marketing is about adding value. It's not simplistic, but there's a difference, and I think you cannot just look at this efforts as a quota. You have to do it out of conviction. Everybody's talking about it, but it cannot be a checklist or just the politically correct thing to say. It should be, again, an integral component of a vision, a key element of the DNA of a company culture, and it has to be an uncompromising commitment.
Right.
And if you think about it, in this world in which most categories become landscape, and consumers not only are trying to stay away from advertising. Now, there's ad blockers, and there's many ways, and there's so much media fragmentation. You cannot go for vanilla or beige, which is a lot of the work that we see out there.
A lot of mediocrity out there.
This is not a zero-sum game. If you really want to make a connection, you have to anchor your efforts on cultural relevance. Another thing I tell clients, reaching is not connecting. You can be reaching eyeballs, and that was a little bit of the total market era in which a lot of clients thought, I don't need to do anything specific in terms of multicultural. I'm already reaching them. Yeah, but you're reaching them with the wrong message.
Yeah,
and you're wasting your money. To me, the more diverse an agency is, the more it creates a unique ecosystem that generates the environment, the acceptance, the openness, and that spirit of collaboration. And that was the success, in a big way of Alma. 32 nationalities, all the voices being heard, young, old, experienced. It's about the mix, and diversity is good business. Diversity pays off. But again, diversity should be a mission statement and needs to be nourished, enhanced, and celebrated.
On your journey from when you started to where you are now, you mentioned earlier, like, the ad industry should be embarrassed it's taken so long. Why is it taking so long?
Because we would need another half an hour to talk about what's in. Let me start kind of macro. Instead of fighting to remain as an idea business, we became a service business, and instead of selling ideas, we are selling hours. And I think this notion of basing our compensation on full-time employees, how many hours will it take, as opposed to the partnership this industry had with marketing visionaries that really understood the big picture. In most cases now, advertising is being purchased by procurement departments, pretty much like toilet paper. It's unfortunately, the industry has been commoditized, and I think we need to push back. I think we need to fight for great ideas, and the most advanced and progressive marketing people and CMO leadership understands that, and I think the pendulum slowly is moving back. But unfortunately, I see a lot of people in our industry that, are trying to survive. And I know that the margins are tight, and the outlook has become much shorter.
Yeah.
The holding companies and the networks are only looking at the next quarter as opposed to 5 or 10 years out. And I think it's had an impact on how we approach business overall.
So now with this next part of your career, of your journey, how are you approaching Included?
Well,
tell us about it.
Included has been morphing. It was launched July 1st, and I have to tell you that it's been fascinating to see, how prevalent multicultural marketing is. And there's this feeling that people past their 50s are kind of obsolete.
Yeah.
And I'm very happy to say that I'm re-energized because I've been approached by a lot of people that appreciate the value of experience, the value of commitment. Included was born with this notion of being kind of a creative consultancy. The name clearly communicates a mission. Funny enough, when I thought of it, I figured, I'm sure it's trademarked. And the name exists in other industries, but not in our industry, which is also telling.
Yeah.
But I don't know when you'll air this podcast. I can anticipate that probably by the time you air it, Included might have morphed into something bigger. And I've been having very interesting conversations. My focus, and this will remain no matter what happens, is to do work that is relevant, that really represents multicultural communities in the right way. Included is kind of a mission in terms of how I try to work with clients and co-create. I see clients as part of the inclusion.
Yeah.
I see teams that are definitely included, and in fact the logo represents the different voices that eventually come together and become one. But every single tone, and you as a musician will appreciate that, every single tone plays a role, and it's beautiful when everything becomes in synchronicity. Yeah. But you have to listen to the different instruments. You need to make room for the different tones. And I want to do work that really has an impact on not only on culture, but on purpose and society. If you think about it, in a few years ago, brands were all only focused on cultural relevance, and purpose was mostly in the hands of institutions, and society was something that we expected from government. In today's environment, brands have to have a role in culture, in society, in communities. So I think that's what excites me. I think there's an opportunity to really do work that shows the value of advertising and how we can really have an impact and improve the quality of lives. I've been talking about this. I think more than in the business of creativity, we're in the business of optimism. We get paid to find the bright side, to look for aspirations, to make people dream, and that's the type of work that I would love to be able to continue doing as I move forward.
Your passion is palpable, and I appreciate all the work that you've done throughout your career. And I'm so excited to continue to follow along. Luis, tell all of our listeners where they can get in touch with you, where Included lives on the internet, your URLs, social handles, all of that.
Well, I'm quite active on social media platforms, especially on Instagram. My handle is Luismi Quixote, like Don Quixote, Luis Miguel Quixote. And I try to spread optimism on a daily basis. I try to come up with quotes or messages that are positive, and I do it early in the morning because I think it sets the tone.
Yeah.
On Facebook, I'm more focused on family. I have a 6-year-old daughter that it's the light of my life, and I share with my circle of friends what's happening in my life and in the life of my wife and my daughter. And I have 2 grown-up children that I'm very proud of. And on LinkedIn, I'm very much focused on sharing thought leadership, good thinking. I do have a website, but again, stay tuned because I don't know where Included will go, but it's includedcreative.com. And at this point, it's a lot about me because I'm a one-man show at this point. But I'm very optimistic that in the next weeks and months to come, you'll see or hear about how Included becomes something a little bit bigger.
Yeah, and we will definitely share all those links in our show notes and in the emails that go out. And for more on the Branders Magazine Talk with Branders podcast, go to brandersmagazine.com. And for more on me, I can be reached at stevenbacanza.com. Luis, thanks for hanging out with us today. And I look forward to our next conversation because we're definitely going to have another one.
Excellent. Thank you again for including me.
Of course. Take care.